Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 25 preview where we'll be discussing some of the key players and teams that you should be looking to target. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, I thought I would start with the cheap midfielders, and rightly so. There are a lot of questions this week about the best cheap midfielder to go out and buy, and also whether it's worth selling your cheap midfielder for another one. And recently, for some people, this would have worked out well, but for others, it wouldn't. And in the past, I've been saying maybe we just stick with our cheap midfielders, but if you don't have a Bournemouth midfielder and you don't have someone like Morgan Rogers ahead of a double game week, I can understand the temptation to go out there and sell someone like an Amad Diallo for one of them. So we're going to discuss all of that. And usually I would say this is a very simple thing. I am a sucker for a double game week normally. In the past, I have bought some really stinking FPL assets just because they have a double game week. And yes, I'm looking at you, Dennis and King. If you know, then you know. But you'll see throughout this video, I'm less keen on this double and less keen on going all in on Aston Villa than probably I usually would be. And I'll try to communicate throughout why that's the case. Because for some assets, there's certain things that I don't like as much about them, but also Aston Villa do blank in Game Week 29, and one of the games in the double is Liverpool. So we're going to discuss throughout the video that I don't think it's necessarily just a no-brainer to go out there and load up on Aston Villa players. So as always, I've got some stats for you, but this season I am trying to incorporate more than just stats into my decision-making, which is why you can see some players that don't have the best stats a little bit higher up the list, but I've got their price, their minutes per game. Obviously, some people have better minutes more recently, but this is across the season. Their non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. Their shots in the box per 90. The fixture difficulty from Game Week 25 to Game Week 30, courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. And if you do want to get 30% off, there will be a link down below to Fantasy Football Hub. And then I've got a Raptor ranking, and that's how I've ordered the table. If I were to go out there and buy one this week, how have I ranked them? And I guess the key talking point straight off the bat is that I've got all three Bournemouth midfielders ahead of Morgan Rogers. So let me first discuss the Bournemouth midfielders, and then once I've discussed the Bournemouth midfielders, I'll then discuss why at the moment Morgan Rogers is in fourth. But I will just note that I think this is extremely close, and it's very team dependent and strategy dependent. So I've got Dango Ouattara in first. I just think when I look at the three assets, they're all looking very good for minutes. They're all getting chance to score goals. They're all creating as well. Bournemouth are an incredibly good attacking unit. I expect all three of these players to do very well for minutes and returns in the upcoming games. There will absolutely be one of them that probably does much better than the other two, but obviously trying to predict that's very difficult. So if I think, just a very easy way of assessing this, if I think all three of them are fantastic and there's not a lot to separate them, why not go for the guy that is so cheap at 5.1 million, playing as the number 9? And we spoke about this on FPL Therapy this week. Sometimes we can overcomplicate this. You've got a 5.1 million pound midfielder playing as a number 9 with very little competition. I don't think Jebuson's going to get many starts in one of the best attacking outfits in the league at the moment. I mean, it feels like an absolute bargain. Then, when you look at the data, he's got the best non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 on this entire list at 0.60. That's actually extremely good, even for someone that's priced at like 7.5 million. To put that into perspective, it's better than Gordon, it's better than Bruno, it's better than Mbeumo. He's got really, really good data. So not only is he a midfielder playing out of position, but he's actually getting really good goal-scoring opportunities. He's also got the second highest shots in the box per 90 on this list as well. The only thing, actually, there are two things that would make me say that Dango Ouattara isn't the obvious, like 100% you go out and buy him. The first being, he's not on set pieces and he's not on penalties. And for me, that is a big one. I like multiple routes to points, like Kluivert's on pens and in swinging set pieces. Immediately, if Kluivert has a stinking game but gets a pen and they score a corner, he can come away with a goal and an assist. If Ouattara has a stinking game, that's it, right? It's a blank. And we've seen this in the past with assets that don't have corners and free kicks and penalties. It makes it a lot harder for them to consistently pick up points. Like the best assets in the game have multiple routes to points. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, he's not a fantastic finisher because he's not a number 9. Like, he's playing out of position. And as a result, he will need more opportunities than someone like a Kluivert to finish because he's not a natural ball striker. Like, Kluivert, when he strikes the ball, it's just wonderful to watch. And you'd expect him to score more goals from the same amount of opportunities. But at the moment, Dango Ouattara is literally getting double from open play. So I just think for his price, at the moment, I think he is my favourite Bournemouth asset, but I don't think there's that much in it. If you've got a massive preference for one of the other two, that's absolutely fine. In terms of why Kluivert's in second ahead of Semenyo, I really disrespect Semenyo, by the way. Like, if you look, he's got the best minutes per game on this list. He's got the second best underlying data, the most shots in the box. He's just a brilliant asset, Semenyo, and I probably do disrespect him, but I think if I ignore the fact that let's get rid of Dango Ouattara, right? Nice and cheap playing as the 9. When it's Kluivert versus Semenyo, there's not that much between their open play data. And then, like I said, Kluivert is on penalties and in swinging set pieces. So for that reason, I just think more routes to points, that the data isn't that much lower for him. I think I would favour the guy that's on pens. I do love a penalty taker. And it was difficult to not put Kluivert in first. I think if he was the same price as Dango, then I probably would. I think, so if I was to sum this up right now, if you're looking for outright goal threat and a player that is just going to get a lot of chances, and if he finishes them, therefore a lot of returns, Dango's the guy. If you want someone on set pieces, penalties, a brilliant ball striker, and the guy that's kind of in form, then it's Kluivert. If you want a secure long-term option, because by the way, the reason that Bournemouth assets are so good is they've got exceptional fixtures, as you can see. First here, according to Fantasy Football Hub, from 25 to 30, but also beyond that, they're not bad. Semenyo's your guy. I made a joke on FPL Therapy that they could sign Messi and Ronaldo and Semenyo would still start. It doesn't matter what happens in terms of their attacking outfit. If they want to start Tavernier and Brooks, if even Ilson were to come back, then Semenyo still starts. So if you want a secure long-term option with good underlying data, takes loads of shots, and by the way, it's still a really good asset, Semenyo's your guy, and it pains me to put him below the other two because I think he's so good. Basically, all three of these are fantastic. It does remind me of the Brighton mids of McAllister, March, and Matoma from, was that 2 seasons ago now, maybe 3, where all of them are good, and ideally you'd like to own all 3 of them. 2 of them probably makes a lot of sense given their fixtures. Bournemouth assets keep you so open in terms of your strategy because they've got great fixtures. They have a fixture in 29, and they've also got a cracking fixture in Gameweek 30, and then beyond that, they're not bad. So Bournemouth just keep your options open. So I love going out there and getting one of these 3. Let me know down below how you would rank the 3 of them. I don't think you can go wrong buying any of them. So why is Morgan Rogers in 4th then? Rogers has a double game week. 2 home games. Rogers is a big game player. He could absolutely get something against Liverpool. And then the other game is Ipswich. And I'm pretty sure early on in the season he got something against Ipswich. I might have made that up. But I remember it was the 2-2 draw. So these are 2 good games for him. We know that he is much better at home. They then have another home game after that in 26. So why? So we have a look at the underlying data. It's weaker than Ouattara and it's weaker than Semenyo, right? It's the same as Kluivert. So Ouattara and Semenyo from open play are going to give you more in terms of chances, and Kluivert is on pens and set pieces. So data-wise, I prefer the Bournemouth midfielders. In terms of shots in the box, he's only taking 1.08 shots in the box per 90. So when he gets chances, they tend to be pretty big ones. They tend to be sort of tap-ins or easy opportunities. Maybe the likes of Semenyo and Ouattara shooting on sight. And so great, Rogers doesn't necessarily shoot loads, but when he does, they tend to be pretty good. But that's not really a 1 shot in the box per 90. He's basically getting a maximum of 1 decent opportunity per 90. I just feel like I need a little bit more from him. If you see here, if you order the fixtures by difficulty, again on Fantasy Football Hub, Aston Villa are in 15th if you look from 25 to 30, because remember, Aston Villa will blank in Game Week 29. So yes, you're getting the extra fixture in 25, but you're losing it in 29. And so what you're saying then is you're either free hitting in 29 or you're booking in another transfer to then sell Rogers. So is it worth using an extra transfer or booking in a free hit to buy Rogers and sell Rogers rather than just going for a Bournemouth midfielder who you can keep? I'm not so sure. The real thing for me, though, that I would worry about is Rogers is on 8 yellow cards. So let's say that your plan is to free hit, right? Let's say that you're not going to buy and then sell Rogers, or you're going to wildcard in 30. Rogers is on 8. If he reaches 10 yellow cards before Aston Villa have played 32 Premier League games, he's banned for 2 games. I could absolutely foresee Rogers, before even game week sort of 28, picking up 2 yellows. If he gets booked against Ipswich, he only needs to pick up 1 more then, and it's a suspension. And he's not on penalties or set pieces. Like I love Morgan Rogers, right? I've got Rogers in my team, and outside of the Prem, he's done very well. He had the hat-trick in the Champions League, a goal and an assist against Spurs. But his 3-1 pointers in a row in the Premier League, he is a little bit inconsistent. And I just think the Bournemouth assets are so good. So the 8 yellow cards, the lack of penalties, the lack of set pieces, the okay underlying data, the fixtures not being great and the blank in 29, I'd buy a Bournemouth asset ahead of Rodgers. And I know that is controversial, and I'm very sorry if Rodgers goes out there and gets returned in both of the games. But I just see that as the route for me. So, like, I'm sat here with Rodgers now. Obviously, if you've got Rodgers, by the way, please don't sell Rodgers or even consider it. But I just like the Bournemouth mids. So there we go. That's a long sort of 10-minute section on those four. Just to sort of very briefly go through the others. Ahmad is great, by the way. And I know how bad Man United are. Trust me, I know how bad Man United are. But Ahmad is still brilliant. And I think if you've got Ahmad, I wouldn't be selling Ahmad for a Bournemouth mid. I wouldn't be selling Ahmad for Rodgers. They've got really good fixtures coming up against the likes of Ipswich and Leicester Man United. If you've held Ahmad this long, you continue to hold Ahmad, for me at least, unless you're in a really luxury position. Damsgaard is worth a shout given he's 5 million. He's actually got okay underlying data. I thought it was actually a little bit weaker. It's about the same as Rodgers and Kluivert. And the fixtures over the next few still aren't bad for Brentford. But I feel like you've slightly missed the boat a little bit with them. And if I was going down to that sort of price, I just think Dango is so clear for me. I've got Nwaneri in there. Martinelli apparently out for 3 to 4 weeks. It could still be Sterling that plays out there. And Nwaneri's only played more than 45 minutes on one occasion this season. So I don't expect him to go out there and get back-to-back 90s or anything like that. But with Leicester this week, he could be a decent shout. And then Alanga deserves at least some chat around him because he's been really good this season. Every time I watch him play, I'm so impressed. But the fixtures really aren't there to target for Nottingham Forest. So for me, as you would imagine, if you're going to go out there and buy a cheap midfielder, it's a Bournemouth mid or it's Rodgers. I would love to know if you disagree with this down below in the comments if you think just attack the double. I genuinely think if you want to go for any of those top four, you really can't go wrong. So guys, I'm going to discuss Isak versus Watkins and whether it's worth selling Isak for Watkins. If by the time you're watching this, you already have an update that Watkins is not available or is a real major doubt for Gameweek 25, just skip to the next section. There should be plenty of value in the later sections of this video. Don't click off. But let's go on the basis that we either find out that he's fit or by the time of you watching this, we still don't know he's going to be fit and available. It is a discussion worth having. I've seen people fall very firmly in two camps here. One is that, are you insane to want to sell Alexander Isak? Have you seen how good the man is? And I've seen others say, well, yeah, you're getting a double game week, including Ipswich at home, and they both blank in 29 anyway, so you're going to have to sell Isak anyway. I unfortunately don't really fall very firmly in either of those two camps. I'm kind of sat somewhere in the middle, but let me try and at least go through the pros and cons for potentially selling Isak to Watkins and just compare the two of them. So in terms of the fixtures, I absolutely think I would rather have Watkins 5 fixtures to Isak's 4. The reason for that is not only because it's an extra fixture, but just generally they are slightly better. Ipswich is obviously a great fixture there. Brentford away for an attacker, I think, is a great fixture. Chelsea are a bit hit and miss, and Palace aren't a bad defence by any means. In fact, they're very much improved in recent weeks and months, but I still don't hate that as a fixture for Ollie Watkins. The only real fixture I don't love there is Liverpool, but it is at home, and we know that Villa can be very, very strong at home. In comparison for Isak, the City game is great for him. I mean, City are conceding goals for fun. They keep picking up defensive injuries as well, so they might have to start some slightly suboptimal players. So I think that's a great fixture. I'm not trying to kid myself into saying that that's not a good fixture. Forest have been beat like 5-0 by Bournemouth, so they could be got at. But Forest and Liverpool back-to-back aren't great fixtures. West Ham is a good one. Let's just see how they're getting on under Potter by that point. And then, of course, both blank in 29. I guess what I'm saying here is neither of these have fantastic fixtures over the next 4 game weeks, but I do definitely prefer Watkins. And then, yes, they will blank in 29. The Newcastle blank isn't 100% confirmed, but let's put it at like 98% confirmed. Villa will definitely 100% blank in game week 29. So really, you're going to have an issue in terms of you're going to want to sell both of them if you don't free hit in 29 anyway. Then when we move on to the data, they've actually both got really good underlying data this season, so I'm definitely not going to bash on either of them, but I will just say that Alexander Isak's data this season has been remarkably good. If we look at the non-penalty expected goals per 90, 0.65 is really strong. Watkins up there at 0.53 though. So the pair of them are getting lots of good chances to score goals. Expected assist-wise, When you watch Watkins, he feels quite creative. He links up the play quite well, and it's actually at 0.08. But for Isak, again, very creative. 0.16 is extremely high for a forward. Now, I will note, expected assist, firstly, as a metric, isn't always the most reliable, but also for forwards, they often get assists in FPL for rebounded shots. They also get assists for things like flick-ons, bouncing the ball off to a winger who scores a worldie. So I think expected assist is slightly less important than expected goals for the forwards. But overall, that puts Isak at 0.81 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. That's obviously really, really good data. Watkins up at 0.61, which is still really good. And by the way, this shows how good Dango Ouattara's data is at 0.60. So there is a little bit to separate them, but Watkins isn't a slouch. You're not bringing in a player that doesn't get opportunities to score goals. Big chance involvement. I actually put out this stat on Twitter and also spoke about on FPL Therapy. Ollie Watkins is averaging the most big chances per 90 of any player in the Premier League, ahead of Isak, Salah, Haaland, Wissa, all of which we know are big chance magnets. So Watkins has good data, he gets chances, and he will absolutely score goals when he's on the pitch. So if Watkins is fit and available, I will sit here and say Isak to Watkins is not a bad transfer. Anyone that says it's bad, I disagree with them. Now, is it worth doing? That's obviously a different question that I think it just comes down to so many things. How many free transfers do you have? Are you definitely going to want Isak back? When did you buy him? How much money do you have tied up in him? Because that's the big thing with Isak. I bought Isak at 8.5 million and he's now 9.5. And what that means if you're new to FPL, you've not paid much attention to team value. If I bought Isak at 8.5, and he's now 9.5, I can only sell him for 9 million because you only gain half of the profit that you accrue. So if I bought him at 8.5, sell him at 9.5, I gain 9 million, which means if I then want to buy Isak back from Gameweek 30 and beyond, I will then have to buy him back at the full 9.5. So I'm essentially losing 0.5. This only matters if you definitely want to buy him back. And also, he might fall in price in that time. If lots of people end up selling Isak, let's say blanks against City, and then Forest, well, then loads of people probably offload him ahead of Liverpool, West Ham, blank. How likely that is, I'll let you decide. But team value and value in general does matter. And honestly, you are going to want Alexander Isak from Gameweek 30 and beyond. Let me just bring up their fixtures here because it's an exceptional run, followed by what is probably going to be a double in 33. So it's Brentford at home in 30, Leicester away in 31, United in 32. So Brentford, Leicester, United, 3 really weak defences overall. Then a double game week we're expecting against Villa and Crystal Palace. And then it's Ipswich if that fixture goes ahead in 34. It's a really strong run of fixtures that you just are going to want Alexander Isak for. I think what I am probably leaning towards right now is keeping Isak because I think the City game is really, really strong because of the money that I've got tied up in him. Probably benching him in Game Week 29. And I know that's a lot of money to bench, but benching him and then having him available from 30 and beyond. And listen, if I end up wildcarding in 30, that's fine. I'll still have Isak and I won't have lost the money that I have tied up in him. But there is definitely upside to just attacking and going after at Watkins. I'll leave it there because it might be that he's such a doubt that we don't want to take the risk. But I think if he is fit, deemed fit, we've seen him in training, we know that he's available. I think he starts all of the games for Aston Villa because they've got no other natural number 9. And I do think he'll get goals over that period. And I think he'll outscore Isak in Game Week 25. But he needs to outscore him by a decent amount for me to justify the move. Hopefully that makes sense. A little bit of a rambly section, but let me know what you're planning with Isak and Watkins. So we've obviously discussed Rodgers and Watkins in a little bit of detail there. So I thought I would just cover off other Villa assets because there are lots of questions from people just saying like, which Villa assets should we be looking to go out and buy? So let's cover that. And as I've now spoken about for both players, I don't necessarily think you need to go out there and rush in an Aston Villa asset. Yes, you've got the double, but then Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Brentford are okay. They're not necessarily fixtures that you desperately want to target. Then it's a blank. And then after that is Brighton, Forest. Yes, the Southampton game is great in 32, but that is a long way in the future. So if you take it from sort of 25 to 31, I don't think that's a great set of fixtures. Like really all the Liverpool game has done is moved from 29 to 25. Obviously, again, if you're planning to free hit in Game Week 29, then it doesn't really matter. And you can just view it obviously with 29 not considered, and then it does look a little bit stronger. So in terms of the assets that I think are at least slight options outside of Rodgers and Watkins, defensive-wise, at the time of me recording, I don't have an update on the rest of the centre-backs. like Konsa. If Konsa's fit and available, he's always a decent option. If Mings is back, then of course you could go for him. But Disasi, at the time of me recording, is the only fit centre-back for Aston Villa. So at 4.2 million, he's got to have some consideration. I think Luca Dean is always worth considering because he's so creative. So those will be the two defenders. And then for the attackers, it's Ramsey, Marlon, Asensio, and Rashford. Obviously, you have McGinn as well, who could play an advanced role, but he could also play a little bit deep as well. So I probably wouldn't include him in the discussion. So for the defenders, I just don't think I'd go there. Like, they've got so many injuries, and they are a team that do find a way to concede regardless of who is fit and who is available. And so the upside just isn't necessarily there for me. Like, with Disasi at his price, if you've got like a Greaves or a Van den Berg, you could absolutely look to sell them to Disasi because it's not a massive upgrade in price. And if Disasi does lose his place or he's not a great option, you can just stick him third on the bench. So I don't mind that. But selling someone like, let's say that Trent isn't available, selling Trent to Disasi to free up funds, that probably means you've got to start Disasi a lot of the time. The other issue is Disasi is playing against his parent club in 26, so he cannot play in Gameweek 26. So for Disasi, it's Ipswich, Liverpool, blank, Crystal Palace, Brentford, blank. So it's 2 blanks in the space of 5 weeks. Again, that isn't an issue if you don't need to rely on him every week. So I've put him at 80% confidence to start both in the double. That is under the assumption that Pau is out for both games, Konsa is out for both games, and maybe Mings might be back. But then you would expect it to be Mings and Disasi as the centre-back pairing. So I've put 80%, but obviously if either Pau or Konsa become available, then I would definitely reduce that. So let's see when we get closer to the deadline. In terms of Luca Dean, listen, I just think he's such a good FPL asset when he's on the pitch. And I do think he is comfortably first choice. Let me just bring up his minutes because throughout the season, he's been absolutely comfortably first choice. But there have just been like 2 of the last 3 games, he's got 45 minutes. But then before that, it was 90, 75, 82, 90, 90, 90. He was then obviously benched against Southampton, but then it was 90-90 before that. Like, he will start more games than he doesn't. And I'll put him up at 70% likelihood to start both. But could Maatsen get the Ipswich game? Maybe. And Maatsen has been doing a better and better job. He is definitely not. And I don't think he will be for a while, if at all, first choice ahead of Luca Dean. But it does just put me off slightly. But then his creativity is so good. 0.15 expected assist per 90 is really solid. He takes some set pieces. His delivery is fantastic as well. So I'd like to go out there and suggest him, but do I want to bring in a player from a defence that have loads of injury issues that I'm not confident starts both in the double? And one of the games is against Liverpool anyway. Like, we're not expecting much there. So I'm going to say a no for the defenders, for me at least. And it's kind of a similar story with the attackers, right? I just don't know who starts both. So in terms, let's say that Watkins is fit. You've then got, I think, 6 players that could potentially play 3 positions. So Ramsey, Marlon, Asensio, Rashford, Rodgers, McGinn. Tielemans can even play as the 10. Now, I don't think he will be. He'll be favoured probably in defensive midfield alongside Kamara or Onana once he's back. But there are just so many options for so few positions. Even if Watkins then isn't available, you've then still got 5 players for 3 positions. So in terms of what we saw in the FA Cup against Spurs, we saw Marlon as the 9, Ramsey off the left, Rodgers through the centre, and then we saw Bailey on the right. And I didn't even discuss Bailey as an option as well. There's another player that can play that, right? So that was how it was lined up. Rashford then came on for Marlon as the 9. So Rashford went up top. Asensio came on for Bailey. But then what that did was Asensio went through the centre of the pitch and Rodgers moved out onto the right wing. So what we essentially saw was Rodgers and Ramsey as the wingers or wide 10s. We saw Asensio through the centre and then Rashford as the 9. Rashford, though, kept drifting out into the left channels. And after the game, Emery said that Rashford's best position is coming in off the left. So, long term, I think the best setup for Aston Villa is Watkins as the 9, Rashford off the left, Asensio through the middle, and Rodgers off the right. I think that is what they will be aiming for in the coming game weeks. But Marlon has been doing a very good job when he's been playing. Ramsey is so highly rated by Villa fans and by Emery, and he is best off the left. Ramsey isn't a particularly good central 10 or off the right. So he's going to take minutes off of Rashford immediately, and you're not just going to see Ramsey randomly dropped out for 2 games, right? He's going to play at least one in the double. I've put him at a 60% chance of maybe starting both. And yes, Rashford could start as the 9 if Watkins is out, Ramsey off the left, But then why would Marlon not get a game as the 9? And then you could say, well, Marlon will play on the right, but Rodgers is playing on the right if Asensio's playing through the middle. This is the issue. And once again, McGinn has been preferred in a more advanced role for most games this season. Where's McGinn playing? Is Bailey going to get no minutes? Like, I just think there are so many options that they have in that attack now. Is the upside there? Like, if this was a double of, like, let's say Ipswich at home, Brentford away. Let's say that was the double. I'd say, do you know what? I'm going to have to go for it. But one of the games is Liverpool, and they blank in 29. I'm just not enthused by the Villa assets, sadly. And I don't want to put you off, but this is my opinion. And this is where you tune in to get my opinion on these assets. In terms of who I would go for out of the attackers, my heart says Rashford. My heart tells me that Rashi's that guy, right? He's going to come in. He looked hungry in that Spurs game. He's going to start at least one, you'd imagine, in the double. And he's very good off the bench because of how quick he is. So I think Rashford could absolutely do damage 100%. So my heart tells me Rashford. My head tells me Marlon because he's been at the club slightly longer. He does have flexibility in terms of playing through the centre or off the right or the left. So he can play in multiple positions and he's very cheap. So my head tells me Marlon. But then the vibes and the eye test, Asensio looked so good. And he was picking up some really good pockets in that game against Spurs. So the vibes tell me that Asensio could be that guy. But I just think because of... I think Asensio's defensive work might be the thing that lets him down in terms of getting regular starts. So maybe Asensio's the least likely to start both. I don't think Asensio will start the Liverpool game, is my initial instinct. So there we go. I wouldn't go for any of them. But if I were going to order them, the attacking assets, I'd probably say Marlon, then Rashford, then Asensio. But I mean, any of them, if they start, could do really well, especially against Ipswich. Let me know what you think about the Aston Villa assets. So the only other final discussion then was around the Bournemouth defenders. I think a lot of people, if Trent is a doubt, and I'm recording this before the Everton game, so I don't even know if he's in the squad, but let's say that he is a doubt, or you just need to make a defender transfer. Rightly so, I think a lot of people will target a Bournemouth defender, and I would target a Bournemouth defender once again ahead of an Aston Villa defender, as we said in sort of the Bournemouth versus Rodgers section. So yes, I do think that Huijsen and Kerkez are probably your two best bets if you want to go out there and buy a defender this week below 5 million. So who would I go out there and buy? Firstly, look at those fixtures. We've spoken about them, but they're just such a great set of fixtures. And I love the fact that they've got a good home game in Gameweek 29 as well. I'm going to try and make this a little bit shorter, this section, because I think Dean Huijsen is the one to go for. There is now 0.6 million difference between the pair of them. Kerkez is up at 5 million. That is quite expensive in comparison to Huijsen at 4.4. So immediately the price is a big swinging factor for me. And he's lower owned as well. It's nice to get a cheeky differential wherever you can. But the reason that I would definitely go for Huijsen if I was choosing right now is he's got greater goal threat, similar assist threat, and better baseline bonus. So look, 0.09 XG per 90. Great. He's a monster from set pieces. Even eye test wise, if you don't like XG, watch him. He's really dangerous from set pieces. Kerkez, I think he scored 2 or 3 goals this season. Like, he's got a wonder of a left foot, but he doesn't have much open play goal threat. He's very, very wide for the most part, and he's usually whipping in crosses. That's great. He's got a decent amount of assist threat, 0.08. But if you compare that to Luca Dean at 0.15, or compare that to someone like Anthony Robinson, that's actually not that much creativity from open play. Whereas Dean Huijsen got 0.06. This is from a few flick-ons, a few good passes as well. But just overall, Huijsen does have, so far this season, slightly more attacking threat. But baseline bonus is the big swing for me. Huijsen is second in the Premier League out of all defenders for baseline bonus. Only Trent has greater baseline bonus. 13.79 is exceptionally high for a defender for baseline bonus. Kerkez, by the way, is 23rd in the Premier League out of all defenders, which sounds bad, but 9.68 baseline bonus is good. And what baseline bonus is it's the amount of bonus points they accrue per 90 on average, removing things like clean sheets, goals, and assists. So it's their baseline level of bonus before you add those decisive actions on top. So what this tells me is if Huijsen gets a clean sheet, a goal, an assist, he is going to get bonus points. And actually, I should have brought this up before, but let me just search for him on the site because he's already got a ridiculous number of bonus. He's got 11 bonus points this season. Bear in mind, he didn't start a game until game week 14. He's got 11 bonus points this season. We can check how much Kerkez has. And by the way, Kerkez is an exceptionally good FPL asset. Kerkez has 8 baseline bonus. Sorry, 8 bonus points, I should say. And he started every game this season. I just think, like, if they were the same price, I think it's a massive conversation to have. Because Kerkez is, from open play, the more advanced one. Look at his touch map. Like, if you watch the games, Kerkez is so attacking. But I just think for that saving, I would go for Huijsen for the better bonus points and the slightly greater goal threat from set pieces. If you are someone that is more of an eye test player and you just want to have fun watching the games, owning Kerkez is probably a lot of fun. I've not done it this season, but because of where he's playing like a left winger at points, it feels great. But I would struggle to overlook Huijsen at 4.4. Let me know where you fall on this. Either of these would be fantastic buys this week. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 25 preview. Hopefully you have enjoyed. And if you have, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. We are on the road to 150,000 subscribers, and I can only do that with your help. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.